Hello, and welcome to Chats with Chelsea. Today, we are continuing our conversation with Advised by Steph. That is how she's known. She is the negotiation expert, the attorney to the social media influencers. Let's tune in. Contracts that are of a higher risk. And so,
hmm
whether it's a influencer working with a brand, the example you use of hiring someone, um, what in those contracts should we focus on and pay attention on? And when is it appropriate for us to reach out to an attorney?
hmm Um, it's hard to say because all contracts can be so different. At the end of the day, it's in a document that's just outlining the parties' relationships and their expectations. So I think what's really important is to make sure that if the obligations that are required from you are exactly what you have discussed, and as well as when it comes to influencers specifically, when it comes to the rights and their content and things like that, like you want to really make sure that your expectations are lined up with what's in that agreement. So if you don't expect them to own something and you've taken a picture or you created a video of some sort, there should not be anything in there that says ownership or even comes close to what ownership will look like. When it's difficult to say like what exactly you should look for because there's some, there can be, you can't just look for the word ownership in that case. There could be a very broad license that could easily just kind of operate as an ownership, even though you technically still own it, but they can, do absolutely whatever they want for it. So when it comes to agreements, especially if it's like really, something high risk and important and you're reading it, and you don't necessarily understand it, there it's a legal agreement. So a lot of people see it and they just they don't understand it and they just are like, whatever, and they sign it. But once you get that feeling of not understanding it and just like, what is this word? What do these words even mean? That's where you have to take it upon yourself to get somebody to help. You can't count on the company, the brand, the other person or whatever, or whoever to kind of teach you and lead you and tell you what it's going to say. They probably won't do that in the first place, but oftentimes they may even like lead you astray. I've had an influencer that recently came to me and she said, a brand asked if they could use my video, and they said it's just going to be this one-time use. And so, but she was like, I'm reading it. It doesn't actually sound like that's what it means. Can you read this for me and let me know your thoughts? And I read it. I'm like, absolutely not. Like, that's not what it says. And, it's upon you to take that note and, see like there's a little discrepancy in what they're saying and ask for help versus, just kind of trusting that, hopefully this is what, it's how it's going to go. Because once you sign that document, you know, that's it.
And so, during your time in the Valley, and now as you're transitioning to, you just shared you work with the influencer. Was it often that what was shared with an influencer or client was a tad bit different than what the contract actually said?
Absolutely. That's that's so common, and it's it can be for me. I think for the influencers and a lot of times people who are just kind of starting off with small businesses generally, is that when somebody wants to work with you or potentially wants to pay you, you get really, really excited. And so no matter what that document says, you want this deal to happen. So you're kind of willing to accept whatever it is at that point. And this happens, even as I work for larger companies when they just kind of really need, they really need this, deal to happen, with this product to happen, this product to be incorporated into their overall technology. They really want it to happen. And so they ask us, they say, read this agreement. Is this okay for us to sign as is? And we say, no, we wouldn't sign this. And you just get a lot of pushback of like, what, like, are you sure? Why not? Because somebody, really, really, if when they really want a transaction to happen, they're willing to take it. But I would say that, for me, it's disrespectful. If somebody tells me an agreement says something and I look at an agreement and it says nothing like that, I don't even want to work with you, at that point. I don't even, I just feel like this is not a good relationship. That we have if you're already not being very honest with, this document that you're providing me.
Well, that is a very real statement, and I think that it's great to hear that from you, Attorney Stephanie, because of the fact that you're absolutely correct, especially for those of us who are beginning in the influencer world. I'm tapping into it, and you can see an offer,
Hmm.
But as you've shared repeatedly, it's so important to remember that once you sign and you put your John Hancock on the dotted lines,
Exactly. Yeah.
you're bound by that agreement, bound by law,
Hmm.
and it can get
Hmm.
very messy otherwise. And so appreciate you, just being real with us that if what we read in a contract is different, you know, hugely different than what they said, then we may want to take a second look at even working with that company,
Yeah.
and what that means, and not to allow the money to drive us. Because influencers, in smaller companies, I have, a writing company, a consulting company,
Hmm.
this is still a brand, this is still a
Yeah.
business, and it should represent me, and everything I sign my name to should represent me as well. So that
Exactly. Yeah. Excellent. And
that's
it's and I'll add that it's also a mindset change too whenever you're operating in this way, because maybe yes, you're having to say no to, some money like here and there because they won't, change the agreement, or they won't, negotiate to your terms. But when you switch that mindset over to, like you said, kind of that business mindset, like this is my brand, you find that you'll be working with more people who operate in that world too. But if you continue to allow yourself to be around brands, companies, people who do not respect your brand and don't respect your business, then that's going to be the issue that doesn't help you, get you to profiting, and kind of can really put you in bad situations. So you should really, it really needs to be a mindset change of, I'm not, this is just not a quick money scheme thing. This is something that's very important to me, and I want to work with people who have that similar mindset as me, who are willing to respect me as a business.
so hypothetical. A company reaches out to me, they want to work with me as an influencer. I'm really excited. So far, what they said matches the contract,
Mhm.
but I want a little something different in the contract, and I'm hesitant about pushing back.
Mhm.
Walk us through the importance of influencers negotiating and what their power is before they sign.
Hmm. So I think this is very critical. And I will say, for influencers, small business owners, anyone who's not necessarily operating with the most leverage in the conversation will likely be the one you will likely not be using your own paper, your own document, your own contract. And I say that because whenever you're starting at the place of using your own contract, like the company is using whenever they send you something to sign, they kind of have that contract was built for them. So it benefits them, it protects them. Like whoever drafted it, they probably, if it's a large company, they have a team of lawyers drafting that agreement for them. So it was built to protect them and built to benefit for them. So whenever you're reviewing the contract, it completely makes sense if there's things you want to add in there, because it wasn't meant for you. It wasn't meant to benefit you in any way, other than maybe put in the terms that you agreed to, but it doesn't necessarily protect you. And so I think it's very important to make sure to read that document, and then you should have some changes to it. It's very rare where I look at a document and there's nothing that I want to change. Yeah, maybe a conversation if it's actually necessary or needed in this particular situation, but it at least comes to my mind where I'm like, this provision isn't in there where I would typically have it for me. So that's why it's good to have a document for yourself, like your own document that you created for yourself, so that you can kind of compare that contract. So whether it's an influencer agreement, yeah, you're probably not going to be able to give it to a brand to sign, but you can look at it and see, what license do I have in there versus what license are they asking for, and what is the difference, and why are they asking for those specific things? Does that give them more than I've agreed to, or is it just kind of extra fluff, extra words? Those are thoughts you should have as you're reviewing the agreement, but definitely you should feel comfortable. And if they are a company that respects you, they understand that just because they give you a document, you're not going to sign it, and they should be willing to have the conversation. I think it's good if you can, typically it's better if you have the conversation over the phone rather than just kind of, coming out and saying, like, marking everything up or whatever, and it's just completely unexpected, which, although they should expect it, but it's a different world where they don't. So you should, just say, like, hey, there's some provisions in the agreement that, I have some changes to. Would you like me to, would you like to set up a call to discuss it, or should I just mark it up in the agreement and send it over for you? And they can kind of pick if they're just like, yeah, send it in the agreement, and maybe they have somebody review it, or they want to talk to you about it. But definitely do it, because that agreement was not drafted for you in the first place. So make sure before you sign it that it protects you.
As we close, Stephanie, what is that imaginary threshold? Let me be very clear. But what is that imaginary threshold when an influencer, a small business, someone who has a brand should reach out to you?
I think that's difficult. But I think the opportunity comes when you need to reach out to someone is when the agreement has either a high dollar value, or if it goes wrong is a very high risk. And so if that document is so important to you, or potentially has such great, benefits, opportunities, whatever for you, it's a good time to take a look at that, so that to make sure that it actually is what exactly that you're looking for. And especially if that document, when those situations tend to happen, the documents tend to get a lot longer, tend to be a lot more complex. I think at that point, you're not just talking about this one-page document where it just kind of says, you're going to provide this, I'm going to provide this, here's the here's how much we're going to pay each other or whatever. But when you're actually starting to see those larger agreements with more terms and things like warranties, representations, indemnifications, these larger words, and before just signing that over, I think that's where you just kind of need to take a step back and say, all right, if this is so much, if this potentially could, provides whatever support I'm looking for, pay me whatever amount of money, I should actually invest in myself and invest in my brand and reach out to someone, so that I can make sure that this agreement actually, protects me and benefits me in the way that I think it does.
Stephanie, it has been such a pleasure to have you on today's show, to learn about your journey, to learn what you learned there in the Valley, and now how you're using your passions, your skills, your expertise to help influencers. But I love your passion to help women and people of color, because similar to you, I went to law school because I wanted to help folks. When I first went, I thought I was going to be a criminal defense attorney because I grew up in the urban core, and it's like you want to fight for your friends. My trajectory definitely changed because now I'm a lobbyist, but it's still being able to utilize that skill, that passion to now, affect policy, the drafting, passage of policy. And so I just love this conversation today. For those who want to learn more about your new venture and who want to contact you, how can they reach out to you?
Well, they can easily find me, and definitely follow me on Instagram. It's Advised by Steph. Advised is an ADVISED, Advised by Steph. I give a lot of free information and resource and videos on there about typical, situations and issues a lot of influencers have. And then you can also just go to my website, which is www.advisedbysteph.com.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you have a fabulous day.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Didn't you learn so much from Stephanie over these past two episodes? I know I did, and I am an attorney. It is always great to be reminded of what a contract is, the purpose of negotiation, and to keep in mind to read anything that you sign. I hope that you were educated and empowered as you continue on your journey. I look forward to seeing you next week.